I'll be close. I don't know. Oh. Oh, okay.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Frank, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Lee County. I'd like to welcome you today and thank you for spending Saturday morning with us. Today, we will be discussing local voice, local choice, choosing commissioners by single member districts. This meeting is organized by the League of Women Voters of Lee County. In November of 2026, Lee County registered voters will decide by referendum on the structure of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Approval by a majority vote will amend the Lee County Charter requiring members of the Board of County Commissioners to be elected by the voters in their district, a single member, or by voters countywide at large, beginning with the 2028 election. Currently, members of the Board of County Commissioners are elected at large by all the voters in the county. Before we get into the rest of the meeting, I'd like to remind all of you on Zoom to please stay on mute and put your questions in the chat. For those in person, please mute your phones and put your questions on the index cards. I believe that they were distributed. We have more if you have more questions. Following all the presentations, we will have questions from the audience and some answers. A little bit about the League, for those of you who are not familiar with the League of Women Voters. Since 1920, the League, a nonpartisan organization, has worked to empower voters and defend democracy. The League promotes political responsibility through informed and active participation in government and acts on select government issues. The League does not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. The League is fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. The League educates to increase understanding of public policy issues and to engage citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. We hold educational events. We provide nonpartisan election and voter information. In election season, we develop a voter guide and invite all the candidates to participate in that. It's called 411, and we also hold candidate forums. We promote voter registration, vote by mail, and voter engagement in all elections and throughout the year. In addition, the League advocates on public policy positions that are developed through study and member agreement. In Lee County, we are working on issues such as affordable housing, quality public education, healthcare for all, and resilience, sustainability, and maintaining our environment. In addition, in the state and nationally, we're saying no to mid-cycle redistricting, and we are saying no to bills that make it harder to vote and to register to vote, such as House Bill 991, Senate Bill 134 in Florida, and the United States SAVE Act, all of which would make it much more difficult for voters in the next elections. The League does support single-member election districts that are equal in population, that provide access for minorities, and when possible, take local characteristics such as political and geographic boundaries into consideration. We've had this position since the 1980s. It's been reinforced over the years, and we've been involved locally in Lee County in promoting single-member districts for the County Commission for a number of years. We supported the legislation that is making this referendum possible in the fall, and that will allow voters to decide how Lee County Commissioners are elected in the future. We support a yes vote on the November 2026 referendum. This program today was organized by two of our leaders, our first Vice President Jacqueline McMiller and second Vice President Marsha Ellis. And they have been our leaders in our advocacy for single-member districts. Jacqueline is unable to be here in person today. She is on Zoom. I'm not sure. She's been ill. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to participate, but we're hoping that she will be. Before I turn the program over to Marsha, I would like to introduce a recording that Matt Caldwell made specifically for this meeting. As we all know, he's been a property appraiser in Lee County since 2020, He was a member of the Florida House of Representatives from 2010 to 2018. And during his tenure in the House, he served and chaired on several committees. He sponsored a number of bills that became laws, addressing agricultural, natural resources, public safety, medical care, criminal justice, and pension issues. His presentation addresses the historical background of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners, single-member districts, as well as the legislative process to place a referendum on the ballot. So, although he's not able to be here in person, we're going to see his recording.
Ballot. In November, this presentation is on the history of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners single-member districts and the legislative steps required to place this issue on the ballot. In November 2026, registered voters in Lee County will decide by referendum how the Board of County Commissioners is structured. If approved by a majority vote, the Lee County Charter would be amended to require commissioners to be elected by single-member districts beginning with the 2028 election. Currently, members of the Board of County Commissioners are elected at large. Our speaker, Matt Caldwell, served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2010 to 2018. During his time in office, he served on and chaired several committees and sponsored legislation that was signed into law. In 2020, Matt Caldwell was elected Lee County Property Appraiser, an office he continues to hold today.
The process of bringing single-member districts to the ballot in Lee County has been a long and winding road over the last several decades. Early advocates pushed for referendum back in the 80s that barely fell short of the majority needed. Following that, we in Lee County adopted our Lee County Charter in 1996, and that called for a charter review process every 4 years. And so they sat in 2000, 2004, 2008, at which point we moved to an 8-year cycle, and so then again 2016 and 2024. And each of the first 4 of those meetings, single-member districts was a major component of the discussion. And most of them, the push to bring that issue forward to the ballot for the voters to decide on the structure of their government here in Lee County fell short often only by a single vote. Unfortunately, those interests who were arrayed against the change were able to successfully prevent the issue from moving forward. As you moved into 2024, it became clear to those of us who were passionate about this issue, myself having served in the 2008 Charter Review cycle, that there was not going to be an opportunity for an honest discussion about the issue through the Charter Review, and began to discuss the question with our legislative delegation, the folks who represent us in Tallahassee. Many of them, most of them, were already familiar with the issue, having been longtime residents of Lee County. Most of them were favorably disposed towards the change, and absolutely believe that the voters deserve to decide how their government is structured. Thankfully, they, working with one another in the House and the Senate, were able to pass a local bill that will bring this issue finally to the voters in 2026 and give us the opportunity to decide how our government is going to be structured. And that really is the key. When you consider how the county commission is structured today with 5 at-large seats, no Lee County voter has ever had their say on that particular question. At-large voting was imposed at the statewide level in the early 1900s. It is a legal historical fact that at-large districts exist to disenfranchise some portion of the voters. James Madison himself identified that as a defect of at-large voting in the Federalist Papers as they discussed how they would structure the U.S. House of Representatives. So it's long been understood that legislative bodies should be composed of people who represent the interest of their constituents, the constituents that live, reside within their respective districts, and then go to serve in their legislative body in a collaborative capacity to push forward the issues that matter most to their constituents within the context of the larger body. The biggest challenge then, as we look at where we live today in Lee County at a practical level, obviously in the early 1900s, Lee County had fewer than 10,000 residents. So the question of at-large versus single member was probably a little more esoteric than anything else. But today, as we head to 850,000 residents, this is a serious concern. Running for the county legislative body is now more difficult than running for the federal legislative body. A congressional seat represents roughly 760,000 residents. A countywide seat on the county commission represents 850,000 residents. So when you consider both the mismatch in the representation that we face today in a large urban county headed to 1.2 million people, as you consider the genesis of the current system, the at-large system, not being ever selected by Lee County voters as their preferred system, but instead being imposed specifically in an effort to disenfranchise a portion of the electorate, it makes nothing but good sense for this change to happen. The last thing I want to remind folks is it has been a long-running effort. As recently as 2004, in addition to the charter review process, the legislative delegation did try to bring the issue forward. And we want to make sure to give kudos to then Representative Bruce Kyle and Jeff Cotkamp, who worked on this in the State House of Representatives. Unfortunately, at that time, the Senate failed to bring it forward, and it took us here another 2 decades in order to get it done through that option. But nonetheless, here we are on the precipice of bringing this home. It is a well-needed reform, and I'm excited to play a small part in it, and excited to see the rest of Lee County have the opportunity to decide how their government is going to be structured going forward.
The League of
Good morning, District 5, the League of Women Voters. It's great to have you joining us here today as we kick off our advocacy on behalf of single member districts and finally bringing into effect that the representation, particularly out here in District 5, will be the votes that were cast by the people who live out here, that the representation will reflect the voters' will. And in support of that, I am so happy to make the resources with, and that includes the video that you guys just saw by our property appraiser, Matt Caldwell. All of that information is housed in the League of Women Voters toolkit in support of single member districts to share that information with the community. And next, we're going to add to that toolkit and hear from Nicholas Warren. Nick is joining us from up in Jacksonville. He's with the ACLU. He's been there since 2020 as their staff attorney, focusing on voter rights. At the ACLU of Florida, he's litigated redistricting cases, which has become a big issue in the past, in this current legislative session, ballot initiatives, and led voting rights advocacy projects. Nick attended Middlebury College and the New York School of Law before he resettled back down to Florida in Jacksonville. So if you would, please, let's give our attention to Nick. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'd like to just talk about some of the pros and cons, less advocate for one system over the other. I think Mr. Caldwell gave a good overview of a lot of the reasons why single member districts might make sense for a structuring a county commission or a city commission. And of course, folks in Lee County are already familiar with how single member districts work. in the Fort Myers city government next door in Collier County, the commission is elected by single member districts. And of course,
Sorry, Megan, could I interrupt just a second? Would you increase the volume on your computer?
yes. How is that? How is that? Okay, thank you. Is that good in the room? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. My computer has a tendency to change the input volume on my microphone whenever it wants to without letting me know. But as I was saying, I wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons of the different systems. And I think it's important to zoom out and kind of give a survey briefly of how different counties structure their county commissions in Florida. Since the 80s, the legislature has given counties the option to either choose single member districts or at-large systems, even in counties that don't have a home rule charter, which means that they can structure their government pretty much however they like. And a lot of counties have taken that power and by voter referendum changed to a single member district system. So right now, almost 24 counties of the 67 in the state elect their county commissions by single member districts. 7 have mixed systems, meaning that a certain number of the commissioners are elected by districts, and then maybe 2 or more are elected at large. In Southwest Florida, Manatee County elects their county commission that way. And then the remainder, about almost 40 counties, have at-large elections just like Lee. The interesting thing about that, though, is that the Florida Constitution mandates that even in counties with at-large elections, candidates have to reside in a residency area. So the county is already divided into 5 county commission districts. Even though all voters in the county vote on each commissioner, but each of the 5 seats is designated for one of the 5 residency areas that then the candidates have to live in. The arguments that we heard already from Mr. Caldwell in favor of single member districts, obviously, it means that your representation is more local and tied to your specific area of the county or city. Each elected official feels more responsible for their particular patch, their particular area. Folks argue that because of that, there's a closer connection between the elected official and the voters, and more access, because each elected official is responsible for fewer constituents and therefore can have a kind of higher quality of constituent services for the fewer number of folks that they have to deal with. It also makes the cost of elections lower for candidates. So you're more likely to have grassroots candidates who don't need to raise a lot of money to spread out their campaign over a large area and reach a large number of voters to be viable. You could more likely have candidates that are able to see success with less money and having to raise less money. Arguments in favor of at-large elections are kind of the opposite of all those. For every one of those points, there's kind of a downside. For the argument that districts allows folks to be closer to their particular region of the county, there's an argument that encourages sort of a parochial thinking, or that there's some issues or many issues where we want our elected officials to have kind of the greater good of the entire community in mind when they're making decisions, and only being elected from and responsible to a particular portion of the jurisdiction means that they may only have a concern about that particular area. I think that that dynamic has less to do with the structure of the government and more about the people, the quality of the people that we elect. And as someone who's been sitting in city and county commission and school board meetings throughout Florida that are elected under a number of different systems, I know that even in district systems, a lot of the time, if you have good public-minded elected officials, they're thinking about the entire county anyway, and not just their particular region. There's also an argument that when you have an at-large system, the voters have greater access to all of the commissioners. They can go to all of them with a particular issue rather than just having one be responsible for them. I think the counter argument to that is that, again, when you have responsible and responsive elected officials, they're not going to slam their door in the face of any resident of the county just because they live outside their district. And I think we see that a lot in other counties and cities with single member district systems. So that's an overview of sort of the pros and cons of the two systems. It's exciting to see Lee County be able to choose, as Mr. Caldwell said, when the systems have changed in the past, that's been a top-down mandate from the legislature. So it's exciting now that the legislature has given the people of Lee County the opportunity to choose. And I'll just end with one final note, which is that places that elect to choose to switch from at-large to single-member districts usually find that there's something better about the representation that comes from having people be responsible for a particular area of their city or county because of the diversity of the area, because of how large the place is, and it's just difficult to represent a county as big as Lee, which is almost 1 million people now. And it's not just about, not just about racial or ethnic diversity. There are a lot of counties and cities across the state that have chosen single member districts that are relatively racially homogenous or even politically homogenous, but the neighborhoods are different throughout. The needs and interests are different throughout, and the people have decided that it just makes more sense to have representation structured at a district level. And so you can have the kind of melding of the different areas of the county or city at the commission, and have the exchange of ideas and thoughts and views and interests happen on the dais rather than have to happen amongst the voters when they're choosing just one person to represent that seat. So those are some of the things that perhaps will be part of the debate when voters go to vote on this referendum later this year. Happy to be here virtually at the League in Lee County, and thank you for having me.
Available on February 12th.
It's available.
Yeah, that's your caption.
Okay, so I don't need to come to the phone.
Correct. That's what it looks like. Looks like the next thing will be so. Yeah. I think it's available to me. So I have them in the caption.
To our particular county and where we are in terms of considering single member districts. Next speaker, thank you, Sam. We have Dr. Sandra Pavelka. She's a founding director of the Institute for Youth and Justice Studies and a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University. She is a Lee County District 5 resident, so she's here today in her home district. She received her PhD in public administration with a specialization in justice policy from Florida Atlantic University. And she's the recipient of the prestigious 2024 Women in Business Apex Award by the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce. Guys, let's welcome Dr. Pavelka. Thank you so much.
My friend, my colleague, and her husband is pretty cool too. Excuse me. Everybody hear me? I'm a professor, so I tend to be able to convey my voice. So first of all, I'm happy to be in my home district. I live in Alba. I've lived here for almost 25 years. I'm an East Coast East Coast city girl who moved to the country. And haven't looked back. I just love Alva, and I don't necessarily love all the growth that we've seen in Alva, but I do love my hometown and my beautiful, beautiful piece of property. So first of all, I want to apologize for any redundancy. Maryland's in the house too. But there is some redundancy because obviously I wasn't sure what all the different speakers were going to present today. So I apologize in advance. We'll go through that, but we will be using District 5 as kind of a case study. So are you going to bring the PowerPoint up, or is it just going to be kind of in the small frame?
Okay.
Yeah, it's, but you're just going to keep in the small frame? Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
All right, that's fine.
Maybe
And I'll
yeah,
move
we'll
on.
try.
There we go.
That's different power.
It's a different one. It's fine.
Oh, there we go. Got it.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. Okay, great. So again, I apologize for any redundancy, but as we know, every 10 years we have our census, and the census data requires adjusting those boundaries to really equalize the population across the 5 districts here in Lee County. The commissioners obviously last modified the districts using the 2020 census data. Oh, please.
This is the best we can do.
No, it's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
That's fine. It's not for me, it's not necessarily for me, it's for. So again, just to, if you don't already know, Lee County, based on our Lee County home rule, we have a 5-member board. They're elected at large. The commissioners reside in districts, but are of course elected at large. And there's redistricting every 10 years, so based on the census. So we'll get to some numbers in a little bit. So just in terms of some advantages, as we look at single member districts, and again, going off of Matt and Nick's presentations as well, local accountability, holding our public officials accountable, fairer elections, better representation, this is a common statewide model, obviously. And I think most important that voters have a say in how their government is structured. There's a direct, no, go back please. There's a direct link between the voters and commissioners. Again, accountability is improved. House Bill 4001 supporters emphasize empowerment for your district and for your community, as well as yourself, right? Reduces influence on county-wide interests. Obviously, we've seen that not only, in our county through the years, but in other counties across the state and across the country, and for that matter. It also lowers, or we say it lowers, campaign costs. As a political scientist and as someone who has really, looked at government through the research government through the years, and been also a voter and an advocate. It's crazy to think about how much campaign costs are and how much they've increased through the years. It's just incredible and very, very sad, if I may say, because we have so many other needed things to really have that money go to. That was my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of the legal. Grassroots candidates gain opportunity. So if the resident is within the district, which of course that is mandated, but that's someone who is actually kind of going, what am I trying to say here? Really building upon their grassroots and their districts and their experiences within their district. Helping growing inland and rural communities gain a voice. So communities like Lehigh and like Alva have really not had their voices heard through the years here in Lee County. And this just kind of amplifies it. And also reduces voter delusion. Now we see this used, as Nick had said, by state legislators. Legislators are all really voted in on their single member districts, school boards, and city councils statewide. So this isn't something that's new. It's something that is basically a model used in other elected officers. So good old Lee County. Look at these numbers, guys. So 2010, you can see these numbers were, you know, pretty comparable across the districts. About 123,000 in each district. And then look at the boost from 2010 to 2020 up to approximately 146,000 District 3. I mean, not as comparable, but pretty comparable. District 2, 160, 157 plus District 5, 152 up in 4, and 144 over on the west side of the county. So what an incredible, significant boost that we saw in our population. And we're going to see another boost come 2030. Can't believe I'm saying that. 2030, only 4 years away, will be probably over the 1 million mark. So so to see these numbers not only rise, but to see, you know, that we're looking at kind of a comparable redistricting based on that population is something that we really need to take to heart and be concerned about. So yeah, so that's very sobering. That's a very sobering map right there. So I'm using District 5 as a case study today. And we have actually Amanda Cochran's here today. She is her ears must have been ringing as I was working on my presentation. And I know Amanda, and I've known her for several years now and really admire her. But so this is the case study based on the 2024 Republican primary when Mike Greenwell and Amanda Cochran ran in District 5. So looking at some of our priorities here in District 5, some of the concerns that we have. Are all of you from District 5, all of you who are here today? Not everybody? Okay. So those who aren't, you know what issues are important to you. We all know as residents, as county residents, city residents, I live in Ellis, so I'm in an unincorporated. We know what issues are of concern to us, regardless of where you live. We have interests that are specific to our district, and we have interests that are specific to the county as a whole, right? So just because we have a district representative doesn't mean that that representative is not going to really fully embrace the needs of the county. They should if they are a true, responsive, and respected elected official. So getting back to our case study, the rural character of our area, East County, including Alva's twice, I'm sorry, I'm an Alva girl. Buckingham, Olga, Lehigh Acres. Concerns with not only development, but overdevelopment. I was driving down Buckingham Road here, on my way over here. Makes me want to cry. Makes me want to cry because we see all this development and overdevelopment in an area that really is it's a preserve, if you would, and it's supposed to be a preserve, but we've really gone against that in recent years. Concerns with population growth, infrastructure needs, concerns with environmental impact, and concerns with public safety. So these are all, some of these concerns are obviously District 5 related, but obviously there are some that are related and important to the entire county. So going back into 2024 and the Republican primary, what happened? So in 2024, the seat for District 5, we saw Mike Greenwell, Amanda Cochran running against each other in that primary. Mike Greenwell won countywide with 55% of the vote, while Amanda won overall the district. She won the district portion versus Mike winning countywide. So it was 55% countywide, while Amanda won 40, not one, but Amanda had 45% of the vote in the district. Now, the scenario really demonstrates a structural issue that District 5 voters preferred Amanda Cochran over Mike Greenwell, while the rest of the county voted for Mike Greenwell. So that actually resulted in Greenwell winning the seat, even though the district's interests favored Amanda Cochran and supported Amanda Cochran. So again, Cochran won District 5 locally, while Greenwell won countywide. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question on that.
Sure.
Is there a way we can see that type of data for each district with the candidates? Is there a way to look at it online?
Yes, it's actually on the supervisor of elections.
So you can see
Site.
countywide versus what happened within their district?
I don't know about that. Can you get to the next slide? So I don't know if you can actually see that. I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think you can on the Lee County. Yeah,
By precinct.
I think you can, yeah, by precinct, but you have to kind of.
I have the
dissect
data.
it. So this is basically, this really shows, and so look at these numbers though, here. So election day, very close. The early voters, and then the vote by mail. See what happened where it went kind of over the top there. So again, total votes 55% to 45%. But you can see how vote by mail is so significant. And that's not only, you know, people locally. I vote by mail just because I never know where I'm going to be, and I want to make sure that my ballot's in. But I used to, just a little story, when my kids were little, they went to the Alva schools, and our precinct was in, and voting precinct was in the community center out there. So my kids, imagine me walking in with my 3 kids, all kind of appendages, and voting, and that was pretty cool. I miss those days. But that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. But looking at these numbers, it's very apparent where the differences were. And then if we, of course, break it down even more to see that Ms. Cochran won the district versus the county, and Mr. Greenwell won the county. So go ahead. So House Bill 4001 really provides the residents of Lee County with a referendum on county governance and representation. And this is something obviously that is so important to our county. As I mentioned in previous speakers, this is really giving the voters a say in our county governance, in our county representation. So what does this bill do? What does this House bill do? It amends the Lee County Home Rule Charter. It switches to single member district elections for county commissioners. The referendum where we would vote on this is in obviously this fall election, and it would actually be if approved by our voters, it would take effect in the 2028 election cycle. So what happens? So November 2026, if the voters say yes, elections shift to single member districts. In the 2028 election cycles, each voter selects their own district's commissioner. If the voters say no, Lee County stays at large, and all voters continue electing all 5 county commissioners. So the voters will decide, and we'll be able to at least say that we have a say in our county governance. Yeah.
So Amanda won her district. What was the percentage that she won by her district?
65%.
So say that again.
Amanda won her district. What was the percentage that she won the district?
What was the percentage that she won the district?
Amanda should probably say.
Written down.
Yeah,
Was it 65?
and 15 out of 17 precincts.
Yeah, so it was 65% within the district. Yeah, it was pretty significant. Yes. Yes.
Sandy, this is a referendum put forward by the legislature.
Yes.
So do we need 60% for it to pass? or 50%.
This doesn't need 60%.
Sorry.
It just needs a majority. If it's budgetary, or if it's going in the Constitution, yes, but this is for home rule, and I'm 99.9% sure that it really just needs a majority. It's not a 60%, it's not a
Can I help you just summarize the
Oh,
questions
sorry.
that the audience asked?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just so our
So,
viewers.
so the question was, does this need a 60% passing rate or 50% majority? I'm 99.9% sure that it's gonna be. Yeah, okay, so in the legislature, it is 50%. Just FYI, if it's budgetary or if it goes in the Constitution, it's a super majority, which is 60%. Yes,
Do we know what the opposition is going to be to this vote? Because I'm assuming from what I've heard, most of the commissioners are against it, and there's gonna be some organization that's gonna push for voting at large, saying that you're taking away your voting rights, which is a lot of bogus mess. Do we know who, what kind of organization is going to be opposing this and what kind of vote?
well, I don't know what, so the question was, do we know what organizations are opposing this? I don't know of any specific organizations that are opposing this. Marsha and Sandy may know. I do know that there are, that Jenna Parsons, Malika is adamantly opposed to it. And Cecil Pendergrass, our county commission as well, who's represents another district, is opposed to it. So what other organizations are?
So typically when we take a position on a referendum, which we have, we develop an analysis that includes the organizations that are in support of single member districts and the organizations that are in opposition. And because we're getting a nice early jump on this, this is so important. We've worked for so long to bring single member districts to Lee County. Some of the really critical pieces of information, like the final ballot language and the complete analysis, is in the works. We're developing it. And in fact, today's event and your contribution to it, property appraiser Caldwell and Nick Warren, all of those things are fueling our toolkit and fueling the development of the analysis. So we are working on finalizing that analysis, but we feel like it's really important to hear from the community and hear the voice as we engage the citizens in putting together our analysis to support everyone having access to that open information so that you can advocate for this topic for yourself. So the great question, Alan.
So once you this appraisal is a legal form.
Yes.
Information on it.
Yes, and we're going to be sharing and asking you to use your phone to take a picture of the QR code to our toolkit, which is under development. It's on our website with already some historical information that we have there. And so if you take a look, in fact, when you came in, I hope everyone picked up, thank you. I hope everyone picked up. I hope everyone picked up one of these flyers, because the information for the toolkit is on it, and you can take a picture of the QR code and then you can access it online that way. We also have it on our PowerPoint. Now, for this portion of the event, I want to change gears just a little bit. And so each of you guys have index cards. And there should be some pins, and if not, if we could have one of the league members move around the room and share pins with you. We're asking that you write your questions down on the index cards so that we can also have a record of what your concerns are. Again, this is our first event on single member districts as part of our countywide roadshow tour. And so we want to hear from you. If you have a question, if you would take just a moment and jot that down. And then Eddie, can you go to the PowerPoint that we put together? That is the single member districts. Yes, thank you. I'll just work through it and we'll advance through it while people are taking a moment to write a question.
Let me see if I can.
That's not that one, that's Sandra's. Now that we figured it out, huh? Yes, the one you played at the beginning. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just jumping in quickly.
Throughout there have been a number of people who have one of their concerns and interests. Here we go.
There have been a number of people, and you may have seen some of the articles, op-eds, letters to the editor. Over the last few months, and we'll be collecting these as well, so you'll be able to see what various people in the county are thinking about. I wanted to just read part of an op-ed that was appeared in the news press on September 5th from Robert Hilliard, and he writes often to the news press, and he's a PhD, Purple Heart veteran, and former federal government official and college dean. I think this puts it in perspective. Suppose, this is his first paragraph. Suppose, whenever we in Florida vote for our candidates for Congress, the voters in the other 49 states were permitted to also cast votes for our congressional delegation. Suppose every other voter in every state were allowed to vote in congressional elections in every other state. Ridiculous, undemocratic, yet that is exactly what happens in Lee County in every election for the county commission. In other words, all the commissioners are elected by all the voters, and although they have districts, they don't represent the constituents in their districts. I also wanted to remind all of us that currently the school board in Lee County has a hybrid system where they have 2 of the districts are actually countywide districts, and 5 of the districts are single member districts. That's been in effect for a number of years. And we can all see the results of those elections and how that influenced the discussions within the school board. And there are 2 cities in Lee County that do elect by single member districts, Bonita Springs and Fort Myers. So we do have real life examples of what this might mean for Lee County voters if this is changed.
Thank you. All right, awesome. Sure. He's got a question, Sandy.
Okay, you want me to collect questions?
All right, so we have a PowerPoint out. We're gonna just kind of run through this quickly because this is in our toolkit and available for you to be able to share with members of your community. Next slide. And these are our speakers. Next. So one of the things we want to remember is on election day, which is going to be November 3rd, you're going to have an opportunity with single member districts to change how our commissioners are elected. And this will guarantee that whoever wins in that district, right, will be who represents that district. And so we've heard that that unfortunately that districts have been denied representation many times. Next. We can also see here, because of the large population, how we can increase the influence of an individual voter. And that means that your voter power as an individual is increased through single member districts. Again, we really see this as a matter of improving safety and communications. We are a vulnerable community. We have rivers. We are a coastal community. We're faced with evacuations. We want every person who lives in Lee County to have a relationship with their commissioner, to listen when they speak, and to know who they can go to for reliable information and who's responsible for helping them. We want to enact single member districts because it disperses concentrated power. And we had a great question earlier about asking about this. So when you have special interests or industry and sectors that dominate the political landscape, then it makes it harder for grassroots candidates to have a chance. Whenever we are talking about running a campaign for 150,000, 100,000 voters, it is certainly going to be more accessible for candidates to rise up and have a chance to be able to represent their communities. We also have disparity in this community. The coastal communities or properties are much more expensive versus in the inland community. So it's an unfair match. We're really looking forward to bringing this in and leveling up the playing field. We want to amplify our community concerns. We want to honor our geographic areas. And we want to be able to amplify the voices of groups and honor the heritage of the diverse peoples that have lived in our community. Next. This goes into the map. The maps are going to be found in our toolkit. These are to support you in your conversations and your advocacies as you take it into your communities and neighborhoods, write your editorials, and work on behalf of the community to bring single member districts to everyone. Next. And here we go. Here's that toolkit I was talking about. It is under development, and I've been so impressed. Let me just shout out to my lead president. Madam President has done a wonderful job of putting in the information here for us all. That includes the timeline that Matt Caldwell has supplied to us about the history of the move towards single member districts, the outcomes of elections. We like to include information on opposing viewpoints as well. That's very important that we understand so that we can counter arguments and give representation to opposing views and understand them for our own betterment. It's all there. It's to support you. It is a work in progress, and today we're adding to that. So please be sure to use this toolkit to help you inform your position and advocate. And we ask that you consider, of course, joining the league. Now, to go back to the questions, outside of voting, what can local residents do to support single member districts? That is a great question. And that was basically the impetus of taking just a moment to go through this PowerPoint. These materials that the league puts together are available to you. They're available for you to use in your outreach when you have events, when you have house parties, when you get people together. This is to support effective communication, advocacy, and engagement in the community. Next question. How does voting at large help someone who owns property in a different district from where they live? And that is a great question because many of us, especially out here in Lee, out in the east counties, right? Folks live out here, but they may own a business in town. Yeah. And they may be working in town. So we know that we just don't sit at home all day long in our pajamas. We have jobs to do. We got to get our kids to school. We got to drive over and pick up some food, run our errands, go to the airport. And so I thought that Nick did a particularly excellent job in explaining how a good grassroots candidate who is a member of that larger community, just like you, they live here. They understand that their representation doesn't stop at their district boundary, but they're coming from the right place. They're a candidate that's rising up from the community and from their concerns. And from that position, they are better informed than someone who is put into place through special interests to help serve actual constituents. But absolutely fantastic question. Now, we still have Nick online. Eddie, do you think you're going to be able to switch over to him? So we have a question for Nick Warren. And that question is, as the county population continues to grow to over 1 million people, what's your opinion of the mixed option of having, for instance, 5 single member districts and then 2 commissioners at large? So this is a hybrid option. It has been a matter of debate. Right now, from the way I understand, it's off the table, but that doesn't mean that it is a point that can't be discussed. So Nick, I'm going to put you on.
Yeah, I think that the mixed system is has advantages. Again, the question, the kind of overarching question for when folks, whether it's in a county or a city or people thinking about how to structure their school board, is what is our political community and how do we best effectuate the representation of the people in a way that makes sense for our community. And so in counties like Leon, Tallahassee, which is much smaller than Lee, they've had a mixed system since the late 80s with 5 single member district commissioners and 2 at large. And that seems to work well for Leon County. There's just a mix there, and there's also on a 7-member board, there's three folks that have a direct connection with any one constituent. There are similar mixed systems in Duval, Jacksonville, the Jacksonville City Council, the largest city in the state, has a mixed system. Volusia County as well, and Orange, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Manatee also in on the West Coast. So that's an option as well. In terms of how that would come about in Lee, obviously that's not part of this bill. I think there was actually an iteration of this proposed charter amendment that would have some provision for an increase in the size of the commission and an addition of at-large seats given certain population thresholds as the county grew. But the legislature passing a local bill and putting it on the ballot is not the only way that Lee County can amend its charter. The county commission can refer a measure to the voters to amend the charter, and the voters as well can, by citizen initiative, put a measure on the ballot itself. So and I'm sure there's also a charter review process that may happen every 10 years or so. And I think, in 10 years or in, 5 years or whatever it is after this reform, if it passes, has had time to sink in and be implemented, I think it would be, ripe for the community to reevaluate. Is this working as we expected? Are there any tweaks that we need to make? Do we need to add 2 seats that might be at large to again, better effectuate the representation of the people?
All right, thank you very much for that, Nick. And I know that there was a lot of robust debate about it, and the local legislative delegates chose to, I think this was wise to kind of break it down, right? This is our first step forward. And that first step means that we don't want to muddy and cloudy the issue, that we want to make sure that we're giving direct representation, particularly to underrepresented District 5, and that we make sure that their voice is going to be honored and heard. So great question, though. Next. So the next question is a nice tangent, and I think it does have a role in our broader discussion, which is who draws our county commission districts. And so we're starting to get into that redistricting nexus. And this really is a great T-bone for us. Can you, Eddie, can you pull back up the PowerPoint with the map, perhaps? And so we know that redistricting occurs after after a census, and so we're going to be waiting a little while. I will say when the league took up this position of single member districts, and we went up to Tallahassee to ask the other representative and the senators up there to support this local bill, that we talked a lot about the split district. And that is District 4, because District 4 currently is splitting across the river. And Sandra and Nick both used some important words in their messaging. And that message was that at large and county-wide voting can lead to voter voice dilution. And I think that this is an instance where the voices in the downtown district, District 4, are being diluted because they're tagged on like an uncomfortable appendage with the North Fort Myers community. In terms of safety, the league, we feel like that this is really a safety failure. Redistricting guidance advises against districts that don't honor geographic boundaries like a river. In terms of communication. So when we put together the materials and we took them around to have these conversations with the reps and the senators from other parts of Florida, they were pretty horrified by this, because they recognize this is not what good redistricting looks like. And making sure that when redistricting comes up next time, that we are prepared on the basis of safety, on the basis of voter dilution, on the basis of communication, that we address redistricting and we make sure that these districts are redrawn in a way that is in service of the people. So fantastic question. More specifically, the BOCC draws the districts, which is another reason that we want to make sure that the folks that are representing us are in place so that they can make sure that the way the districts are redrawn reflects the will of the people. And the criteria for redrawing those districts is in the Constitution. Sandy, is that our state constitution?
Yes.
Okay, right. So I know redistricting is a big issue nationally. Florida has extra protections to prevent gerrymandering, political party gerrymandering within their state constitution as well. So that is going to come up, and we all want to make sure that we're going to be prepared and active on that issue. So next question is, how does at-large voting disenfranchise voters? So can we get Nick back up? Eddie? He's you guys, let's take a moment while he's working my wheel over here to give him a round of applause. Eddie Stahl, I tell you, we have asked the world of him today. And so if you would, Nick, the question once again was, how does at-large voting disenfranchise voters?
Yeah, so again, it relates to how do you define the political community and what best in that community's view best effectuates the representation of the people. So if you have areas of your county that are very discrete and that have their own particular interests, and whether that's a neighborhood or a city like Cape Coral, I'll just use it as an example because it's a roughly the size of one county commission district in a 5-district map. If there's particular things going on in Cape Coral that the residents of Cape Coral want attention to, and in the at-large system they're being ignored because they're being outvoted by the rest of the county, that's a dynamic that you could characterize as disenfranchisement. That there's a consistent need and desire and voice of one segment of the community that's a geographically distinct segment that might be able to flex its political muscle if it was formed the core of a district, but can't in an at-large structure. We see we see this play out in the courts most frequently under the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which under certain circumstances recognizes that racial minorities may have a right to flex their political muscle in a particular district, even if their voice is outvoiced by the majority in at-large elections. So a lot of the counties, especially in North Florida, that switched to single member districts did so either through Voting Rights Act litigation in the 80s and 90s or the threat of that litigation. As I said earlier, many did not. So that's the dynamic that might be at play, that you could say there's disenfranchisement, or there's a segment of this community that's not that's shouting its voice, but its voice is not translating into political power because the rest of the county is outvoting them. The flip side of that is you could say, well, the majority rules and the majority of the county doesn't support that policy or support those views, and they're outvoting them. And that's why the question of what does representation mean? What is good representation? And how do we define our political community, and how do we want to translate the preferences of our residents into the people that sit on the dais? And those are the questions that folks should think about. I just want to touch on a little bit the previous question about redistricting. It's definitely true that right now the county commission has the power to redraw its own districts. That, again, is something that the county or the voters could look at in a couple years and reevaluate. There's many counties and cities that have adopted independent citizen commissions or even advisory commissions that review redistricting after each census and then recommend a map to the commission. Miami-Dade County is one of those. Orlando and Orange County is another. And so there's a way to filter out the political machinations of it all when you have the elected officials drawing their own districts. And then also the state constitutional fair districts amendments that govern congressional and legislative redistricting do not apply to redistricting at the local level. So the rules are different for redrawing county commission and school board and city commission districts. There recently, just a couple years ago, the legislature actually passed a bill that prohibited certain types of gerrymandering in local redistricting. So now it is illegal under state law for a county commission or a city commission or school board to redraw its districts to favor or disfavor an incumbent or candidate based on their home address. What we saw in redistricting at the local level is that incumbents were very concerned about keeping their homes in their own districts, and that was kind of the number one overriding consideration in a lot of places, and that was impairing the ability to draw districts for the people. And so that's now illegal. So that would not be a consideration that the county commission could consider when they redraw the existing map after the next census. But otherwise, there is a lot of discretion that the county commission would have. That's another thing that the voters or the commission itself or a charter review commission could take into account in the next few years and see maybe we should adopt our own local fair districts rules, put that in our county charter. There are other counties that have similar rules, like Jacksonville, for example, requires districts to be logical and compact. So that's another thing that as the people of Lee County continue to refine and perfect their form of government could consider.
Thank you, Nick. That was most excellent. So what I hear you say is that there are examples in other parts of Florida that we could look to put together information to help inform us going into the next redistricting cycle, because we do have really serious concerns for the district that's split across the river. And we, unfortunately, as I'm sure you're well aware of, we've had more than our share of hurricanes, loss of life, and recovery in this community. And we want to make sure that we're being proactive when redistricting happens to prevent loss of life and speed recovery in the future. I think that's foremost on everybody's mind. I see a lot of heads nodding in the audience to that. So we appreciate that. And could be reaching back out to you to find out how we can work with the other places that have addressed this in language, formal language, to figure out how we can go about it. Okay, next. So we're going to get to hear one of the powerful arguments against single member districts is that under the current system, that each voter can vote on all commissioner candidates, and the change would result in each voter having fewer choices at their ballot. So what I'm hearing, let me just kind of drill this down, is that currently when you receive a ballot, when we all receive our ballots in the mail, that the number of commissioners that we get to vote for, if we go to single member districts, would be fewer. So there would be fewer names on the ballot. And that's what it would look like. That's what single member districts would translate to when we open up the envelope at our house or we go into the ballot box. What are the counter arguments to this? That single member districts reduce voter choices. So here at the League of Women Voters, I'm just going to kind of speak to this. We are, as part of our voter services mission, we try to support informed voting because it is a confusing process. We try to help drill down on what's actually being asked of people. We try to drill down and figure out why is it that my ballot looks different than my neighbor's ballot? Why is it that I'm not going to have a voice in who the commissioner is going to be because I don't belong to that political party and it's going to be someone's just going to move in to that position and I'm not going to have a vote at all. So we know that voting is it is confused with a lot of different choices and that some members of the community, depending on their party or their affiliation or whether they're an independent voter or have no affiliation, that they have fewer choices already, right? Okay, and so part of the League's position on single member districts is we're working to sort of equalize the ability of grassroots candidates from any party or no party to rise up in our community and improve representativeness and also improve accountability. So, for instance, if I'm looking for a cheap meal on the run in my car, I have no lack of choices. I could go to Burger King, I could go to McDonald's, I could go to Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, many places, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily going to support my health. So I think that when we look at the quality of the choices, is it more better? I'm not sure. And I hope that, and I'm seeing you nod, and I'm looking at the person who wrote that letter. I hope that gives a little bit of illustration on the point. Nick, do you have anything to add from your position?
I think again it relates back to a really qualitative, no one size fits all question about what best effectuates the representation of the people. And you could have a very homogenous, relatively everything is the same countywide county where it's better to have each voter be able to vote on all 5 commissioners. But if you have a place that's really big, that has geographically distinct areas with different needs, then it may be qualitatively better for each of those 5 areas of the county or whatever it is, to have a single person looking after that and to have more concentrated voter power electing that one individual. So it's a trade-off between each voter being able to be one of 800,000, but have a voice and be able to vote for all 5, or each voter be able to only elect one but be one of 160,000 or 150,000 residents, obviously. And so it's a trade-off, and like I said, it's not one size fits all, and each community, each county or city has to make that decision about what makes most sense for it.
Thank you, Dick. I've also had a conversation, I think that's relevant, with one of our legislative delegates about this issue. That delegate pointed out the reason why he was supporting single member districts is if you're in a place like one of our inland rural counties, right, where the whole population is less than a single district here in Lee County, then the likelihood of a person being qualified and interested in doing the job. And some of these jobs are very complex. This is a very complex job. Is low. You know, there might be a few people who would be interested. But when you start to get into the numbers of folks that we have in Lee County, then you start to realize that there is high likelihood that you're going to have interest and qualified people in each of the 5 districts that can bring the voice of their community to the table. And that is why why the league is in support of single member districts. And we feel like that it will improve representativeness. And now we have a second question. What are some specific issues on which the outcome of commissioner votes would likely change? That's a great question. Would likely change if single member districts pass. So what I'm hearing the person asking is that, and Nick, maybe historically you might be able to weigh in on this from the broader perspective, but I'll get started. Is that what are some specific issues that commission votes, like changing to single member districts? And Nick, I'm sure this has happened in other places in Florida, right? People, it was an at-large system. They changed to single member districts, and it changed the votes, the outcomes, the makeup of that commission. That's what we're trying to double down here. You know, we heard Sandra as a resident from District 5. She brought her perspective. She shared that the concerns of the inland community, of the rural communities, they felt like they had no voice. The folks in Lehigh Acres, they feel like they don't have voice in terms of the infrastructure, the roads. Those are issues that they don't feel like they're gaining representation on with the current system. Can you, from your perspective, inform what has happened in some of the other places in Florida that have gone from at-large to single district?
Sure, and I'm definitely not going to be able to speculate about what the differences might be in Lee County, because I just don't have the familiarity with the issues that y'all deal with. I think this relates to another question in the chat from Stephen Eldridge, which is about a history of the county allocation across the different systems and how that's changed recently. There hasn't been that much recent change, but the two ones that come to mind, besides, of course, the Lee County School Board switching to single member, or the mixed system a few cycles ago, in Sarasota County, it had been an at-large structure. In 2018, they switched to single member districts by referendum. And then the incumbent commissioners that were still at that point elected countywide tried to roll that back in a snap special election that they held in 2022. And both of those votes ended up with voter support for single member districts. The first election was almost 60% of the voters supported it. And then the second referendum that tried to roll it back was at 57%. The only other county that I'm aware of that tried to change its system in the last 10 or 20 years is Alachua, where similarly the legislature put a referendum on the ballot in 2022 to switch from at-large to single-member districts. That passed by a very bare majority in a low turnout year. If you remember the 2022 midterm, there was then another referendum 2 years later, just last year, to switch back to at-large, and that passed with 70% of the vote. So 70% of Alachua County wanted to go back to an at-large system, and that will happen now. So that, I think, again, just goes to show that there's not a one size fits all, that it really is a local investigation into what makes sense. But to answer your question, I mean, the example that I would give about how single member districts have changed substantively the politics and the policy outcomes in local areas is what happened after the Voting Rights Act was passed, and counties and cities and school boards across mostly North Florida, but also some in South Florida. Hendry County is a good example. Hillsborough is another in Tampa. And for the first time, these boards had minority representation, had Black representation on their boards. It might still have just been 1 out of 5 seats, But even just that 1 out of 5 meant that issues were raised in meetings, that residents' concerns were being aired, that were just not being aired at all, not being paid attention to. And so that's how you had, not just through Florida, but throughout the South, and honestly throughout the country, places that were just not providing municipal services to predominantly Black or Hispanic areas. Finally got sewer lines, finally got their roads changed from dirt to paved, had investments in schools in their neighborhoods. And I've seen it traveling across Florida and seeing the conversations that happen, having the diversity of viewpoint. And again, it's not just racial, it's also about different areas of the county, different communities. Across a number of different valences. And we've already talked here about the coastal issues versus inland versus more rural areas of Lee County. And obviously the center of Fort Myers or Cape Coral is very different from other parts of the county. And having those viewpoints aired, even when you have, you're changing from a residency area system where at least at least the 5 different members reside in a different area of the county, but they may, as we've seen from the election results, where the one district commissioner actually lost within her residency area. That person may not actually represent that area, even if they live there. So they may not have kind of the views of that place at front of mind. So those are some of the differences. It even if it's not about flipping the majority for a certain political party or what have you, it really can shake up and diversify and invigorate the types of issues that are discussed, and the I guess I'd characterize it as the surface area of government. If you've got 4 different or 5 different people that come from different parts of the county that have different views because they're representing different sections of the county, that means that it's more likely that you as an individual voter will be able to relate to one of those rather than maybe a more homogenous kind of cross section of the county if they're all being elected by the same constituency countywide. So that's one hopeful answer to your question.
Yeah, that was really excellent. So Nick, I'm going to follow that up with a question of my own here. And in Lee County, we have a little bit of a dubious honor of having some scandal in the past regarding where candidates actually live, and having candidates removed by the governor or resign, right? And so that has sort of been a real iffy litmus in terms of our representation in the community. Do you know of any protective regulations or work that's been done in other communities throughout Florida that have addressed making sure that candidates that are representing the people are actually residing there, or any efforts that we could take as a community to better safeguard our representation from those sorts of abuses?
Yeah, so in certain counties and cities, there are a range of kind of different strict residency requirements. Some county or city charters require their commissioners to live in the district that they're seeking election to for 6 months or whatever it is before the election or before they qualify. My view, I mean, I don't know that this is the ACLU of Florida's position, but my personal view on this is that the voters should decide who they want to represent them, as long as the candidates are being honest about who they are and where they live. For state legislature, for Congress, a candidate doesn't have to live in the district that they're running for. For legislature, they have to live there once they're elected. But for Congress, you don't even need to live in the district you're elected to. And if the people know that and think, notwithstanding that, that we think that this person is the person we want to represent us, then my view is that the voter's choice should rule there. Again, as long as everyone is being honest about who they are and where they live. There's a comment in the chat about potential problem with a hybrid 5-2 system is that you could have 3 members of the board who live in the same area. And that might, I mean, you could view that as a problem, certainly, if you prioritize geographic diversity of representation. But if there's 3 really great candidates that have a lot of public support and they happen to live in the same area, then there's another view that would say, well, just the fact that they live in the same area shouldn't mean that we disqualify them. But that's again, not a one size fits all or necessarily a hard and fast rule. If you would rather have geographic diversity of representation, you could still have a 5-district map that you can imagine the map where all 5 districts sort of meet in a similar area. And you could still end up with 5 commissioners from there. So anyway, that may be some answer to your question. I think that if your goal is to make sure that candidates and commissioners actually live in their district, Lee County is not unique in having elected officials who've been accused of not actually living in their districts. And I don't think there's really not a great way to make sure that happens. Determining what someone's residency is a very slippery question. So as long as someone has a house or rents somewhere and is there some of the time, they're usually not going to get a court to declare that they don't actually live there. Homestead fraud is a different question.
You guys, let's thank Nick together and give him a round of applause. And Sandra had to step out, but let's give a round of applause in her honor. So I just want to wrap up once again and urge you, if you are not a member of the league, to please consider joining this election cycle. Now more than ever, we need your support. Thank you for participating. Do you have something to say? And so I'm going to welcome Nancy Leverance. She's going to step up to the podium and share some information.
Yes, I just have some. The League of Women Voters have taken a stance on some of the attacks on our democracy, and there are some actions we can take. So I've got a few things to pass out. What it is we were talking a little bit about the Congress redistricting, and I have here the phone numbers of all the members who are now looking to redistrict not within the 10-year census data, but it's blatant gerrymandering, and it's against the Florida Constitution that was adopted in 2010. And I've got all their numbers and a short thing that you could call each member if you would so want to. Calls do count. I think they do take counts on them. So I'm just going to pass this out, and if you'd like to. And I will say that our representative is Jenna Parsons-Beluga, so she might be the one that actually would count, but the other ones you might want to let them know what you think about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you're not aware, the League, we really work in defense of voter services. There is movement on some bills that would make it more difficult for folks to vote at the polls. For those of us who do work in the polls and work at registration, we want to make sure that we're not putting up additional barriers for folks to exercise their votes. We realize how constrained time and resources are. So continue to follow these issues, take a picture of that toolkit, join the league. And Sandy, do you want to wrap up anything?
Thank you, Marsha. First, I'd like to thank Marsha and our speakers today. We really appreciate it, and it was a good dialogue. Thank all of you for participating and helping us to understand this issue better and how it affects you. It was mentioned earlier, but I want to mention again, make sure you are registered to vote, make sure you've updated your vote by mail, pay attention to the issues, and stay informed. If you're not currently on the league's email distribution list, we have things that go out from Lee County, from Florida League, and from the US League. They're all 3 independent mailing lists, but you will be kept up to date on current issues in each of those jurisdictions. So I urge you to sign up. There's no charge for that. Keep in touch with us. Let us know what you're thinking about. Help us to build our campaign to promote single member districts and all of the other issues that we're working on. And I want to also remind you that we do have educational meetings, usually the first Saturday of each month, and they will be restarting. We have them at the Collaboratory. The next meeting will be March 7th on affordable housing in Lee County, April meeting on the environment and development, and the May meeting will be on preparing for the 2026 election and networking for voter engagement. So I urge you to work with us on this. All of that information will be on our website. And again, I thank you, and please, let's keep this dialogue going. Thank you very much. One more thing, you got ignored twice, so it's a mistake. We have, Paul Benicio was helping to record this from the back of the room, so you didn't actually see him, but he really made his help with today to write in for candidate forums, and really appreciate your assistance.